business, and you kind of have to build that relationship first. So we got to know each other a little bit there, and then eventually I kind of asked him, hey, I haven't seen you guys bidding a lot on our stuff. Well, there was a perception, I think, out there that we kind of had our groups that we worked with, and we weren't too open, which was not the case. It was just self-fulfilling prophecy, I guess, was if people do transportation, they want our bids. So it was really hard to crack in the door. So we started talking a lot about just trying to get in on something small at first, and I think that's what basically happened. They landed a small little campaign. From there, they really start to understand the internal politics and what they can communicate. I mean, we have to change. Our funding is all handled by legislators, so we have to keep them happy, but we technically actually are part of the arm of the executive branch and work for the governor. And understanding the politics there is critical to how we do business. And Chris and the Intrepid picked it up pretty quickly. What starts happening when we see a group that gets it, we'll start throwing a lot of business. Almost, I even warned him when he first got in, are you sure you want to do transportation? It will suck you in. And I don't know how to suck you in.
Absolutely, about 80% of my time. Never a frog in my mouth. It was, as Nile said, it was challenging because it almost felt like, when I was in high school, I really wanted a job working in a restaurant. Because I thought it would be more fun than fast food or working at the grocery store, which is where I ended up working. And I couldn't get a job in a restaurant because I didn't have any restaurant experience. And they all required restaurant experience, but how do you get restaurant experience if you can't work? And it felt like that same type of thing. And sometimes you have to get your foot in the door somewhere and be able to find that. Let's talk just briefly from a student perspective, the difference between corporate government agency. And I'll jump in here quickly. As far as agencies are concerned, I think we, answering your question a little bit on what agencies are looking for, working in an agency is a very different environment. It's a fast-moving environment. It requires a lot of multitasking. Typically, I worked for a larger agency out of San Francisco where I worked primarily on one client, and it was much more like working corporate. But most Utah agencies, account executives, will be working on several different clients, which requires, and to me it almost feels like being a student. You've got all these different classes you're taking. You've got to be an expert quickly in each of them, and understanding their industry, understanding their culture, understanding what they need, being adept at providing a number of communication skills. And it can be very cutthroat. If you can't pull your weight, you don't last long in an agency. From the perspective of a student, a lot of corporations look for people with agency experience because they know if they've worked for an agency on some good clients, that they have strong experience that usually translates well into a corporation, but it is an adjustment. When you talk about PR from an academic level, and I try to think back 12, 15 years ago when I was a student, you just saw PR as this one blanket, and it's so different depending on where you go, what the various strategies and tactics are, what the various roles of PR. But to give you a view from an agency standpoint, you're usually more interested in communication. There's much less, having worked a little bit on the corporate side, there's much less politics. As it relates to a client like UTAH, you have to understand the politics, but Nile's the one who's waiting for the politics. Sometimes I'm helping him a little bit with strategy, but I'm not the one that's dealing with the legislature or the executives or the governor or somebody else. I don't have to get involved in those discussions. I'm focusing more on communication strategy. So it's a little bit different that way.
Corporate, or for me, government, it's, you know, we don't really hire anybody really new. You have to have a few years experience, and there's a good reason. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of the cliche that working for government, it's hard to get anybody out. I mean, it almost very literally takes an act of the Almighty to remove somebody once you're in with the state. So we have to be very careful who we actually hire. So in order to get in and working in government, you have to, I worked in nonprofit for about 3 years, and it's very similar. You have to really believe in the cause, I guess. The advantage of working for an agency is you get to kind of switch around and do a lot of different things. You know, in my business, I'm rows. Wherever I go, I'm like a walking UDOT booth, and people come up and say, hey, my signal at 7th East isn't working, can you do something? You know, oh yeah, you betcha, I'll get right on it. But that's just that's just the nature of the beast. You become your entity. When I was at Farm Bureau, it was the same thing. I had to know farming, whatever it is. So if you get passionate about it, that's where you go. I am passionate about transportation, more so than when I first started. I remember talking to Chris when we brought him on. I told him up front, it doesn't sound great, but once you get into transportation, it's a kick. And it really...
You wouldn't think it would be creative. It's unbelievably creative.
It's really fun. So I've been here 8 years, and I can't see leaving for a good while. But that's some of the differences. So if you're the kind of person that likes to get passionate about one thing and just pour yourself into it, nonprofit, corporate, government, that's a good place to go. If you want to keep your options open, enjoy working on a variety of things, I think an agency would be great.
A couple of other things I want to underscore. As far as skills, writing, Nile touched on it, but I want to underscore it. It seems like it's gotten better lately. About 5 years ago, I was complaining to a number of the universities that the writing was just so poor that was coming out. Students that we do a lot of testing when we bring in interns or entry level. In fact, all employees go through a series of tests with my agency. And the writing was just so poor for the students 5 years ago. And I'm seeing it improving, but that's one place to really focus on. The fundamentals won't change. The media will change. The fundamentals won't change. Your ability to write, your ability to write to a different style, which you're seeing now with the internet, but having those strong fundamentals as far as knowing how to, from a journalism standpoint, being able to identify the story, being able to position it appropriately, and being able to write it are really key. Second is internships. I would say more than an internship. The people, typically the way that my firm hires, we've never posted a job on our website, we've never posted a job in the paper. We work for people we know. If something opens up and I don't have somebody I know on my radar screen that's good, I'm calling other people that I know, and I think that's more the norm. And so working internships, doing a good job, building that network of people, so that when, it's interesting too, I'll get calls from time to time, even from competitors that will say, gosh, I had this intern that was really great, or I had this person at work that was really great, but we couldn't keep them for whatever reason. You really should look at it. It's a lot different than trying to claw your way in somewhere. Having that network where somebody feels so strongly about you that they're actually knocking on doors on your behalf. So, I worked about a dozen internships as a student, and I say internships, these weren't necessarily posted, they were freelance positions, they were working events, anywhere I can get experience, and I look for that same thing when I'm looking to hire people. I'm not looking for, gee, I just got a degree and I'm graduating, and not to belabor the point, I know someone in this market that they graduated and they had a couple of really good internships, couldn't get a job, and actually worked internships for a full year before they landed a position with an agency, and have done really well since then, but really had to pay their dues. I think everyone, and some of the professionals hopefully here can attest to this, everyone who works in communications has paid their dues at some point, and has worked for free or for little money, and has put in long hours, and has really learned the craft. And just getting a degree in an education, great program here, I'm sure you're learning a lot of great things, but applying that is the next step. So.
I can think of examples. When I graduated from here, the PR state president at the time of our student chapter actually couldn't find a job right away, went into selling insurance just to keep the income going. Well, he's still selling insurance, and he keeps regretting that he couldn't get back. It's like once you leave, it's really hard. I think Chris makes a great point. If you have to just scratch and claw through internship after internship, do it, because that's kind of what it takes. And it's those people that you see surviving that rise to the top. It's a really crowded field, but it's crowded with a lot of average people. So if you're great, you'll get noticed, and you'll get those internships that lead to other things. And people, like I said earlier, we work with probably a dozen different PR firms, PI firms, and all of them are very similar. None of them advertise for job openings, but they're all constantly looking for people. So I think every one of them would